words during the pandemic. You're on mute. So it's been a long time. I'm very happy to be here. I think the last time it was in 2019 when we attended this conference. I got a chance to speak. 5 years have passed, and a lot of things have changed. We've been through the pandemic. It's been like a lot of shipping-related changes, challenges, but we are here. I'm glad to meet all of you, and good afternoon, everyone. My name is Bobby Varghese. I am the Senior Vice President for Group Finance with Abu Dhabi Ports. Before we go into a little bit about ship finance, the maritime industry, and the challenges that we're facing, I'd like to give you a little bit of background about Abu Dhabi Ports, the AD Ports Group, right? So AD Ports Group was formed in 2006 through an Emiri decree, and then in 2021, as part of, through organic growth and some partnerships that we had, we kind of got into this new branding. It's called AD Ports Group now, and we have 5 clusters. So each of these clusters, so there's the ports cluster, the maritime cluster, the logistics cluster, the economic cities and free zones, and of course the digital cluster. And then we have a corporate office, and then we also have the international business. Now, the way that we have structured is in line with the strategy that we have adopted. It's very futuristic in the sense that it helps us to decide on the investments that we make. It also helps us to decide on what's the way forward, right? So when we, for example, acquire companies, we acquire a company that fits into one of these clusters, and we can bolt that on, and that's the way it is structured. And I'd like to, take you through a little bit about our story, and not more about talking about AD Ports and what we do, but more about how, as a company, we have actually weathered the storm, how we have been resilient through this last 5 years. Now, there are 4 pillars that we have that we really look at to see how we can grow in the future. In these past 5 years, I think Captain Amar spoke about it in the morning, we have listed on the ADX stock exchange. We have tripled our revenues. We've also concluded almost 7+ M&A transactions. So if you look at this, what has happened in the 5 years with all these challenges, how we have grown, right? So there are 4 pillars. The first pillar, of course, is a strong balance sheet. So we have good cash reserves. We also have access to long-term funds. We also have a structure in place where, if there is an opportunity, we can immediately seize it through some short-term financing and then convert it into long-term financing. So that's one of the pillars that we have. The second thing that has helped us basically is the long-term sticky revenues. Now, why is that important? Almost 50% of our revenues are actually long-term contracts. So what happens in a downturn? 50% of the revenues stay there, right? So we try to keep a lot of it as long-term sticky revenues. That's one of the pillars that has helped us. The third one, of course, is our association with the Abu Dhabi government. We are the master developer of all the ports facilities, mostly the commercial ones in Abu Dhabi. So that's helping us. We are also part of the non-oil sector growth for Abu Dhabi. So that's one of the key pillars that we have. And finally, we also have a 3-point growth strategy, right? So what happens is that as a company, we have a lot of existing facilities, so we try to leverage on the organic growth that is there. We also have a 15 billion capex program over the next 5 years. So we are also growing. In the next 5 years, we will see new facilities, new opportunities coming up. And then, of course, we are always on the lookout for new M&A opportunities, new investments. And just last year and this year, we have secured 2 big deals. We talked about it in the morning. One was Noatum, which has helped us to be on the international playing field with almost 26 countries of operation, and of course GFS, which we just now closed in the end of January. I don't need to cover this part, because this is we already spoke a lot about it in the morning session. The financial landscape, the shipping industry landscape, we have 3 major themes, right? One is, of course, the increased demand. There's a lot of capital that's available there, but there is also high cost of this capital. At the same time, we are also trying to find new ways of financing. As we talked about earlier, some of the alternate financing we have been really looking at is one is basically factoring, one is basically securitization or monetization of assets. These are things which are not very common here, but these are alternate financing options that we are looking at. So that's one of the things that's in the maritime financial landscape. We are operating in a very heavy, economic headwinds scenario. There's always uncertainty. We talked about all the scenarios in the morning. We talked about all the geopolitical tensions that we're going through, the crisis that we're going through. We have to operate in this particular landscape. It is not easy. We have to be on our toes to make sure that you identify the right opportunities. And of course, there is a push for sustainability, ESG, green financing that we spoke about. I'm not going to go into that in more detail. When we look at expansion and financing in this economic and this maritime landscape, there are 5 challenges that we have identified. I just want to take you through the 5 challenges. We also look at what are the opportunities that we have, and then a little bit about, as AD Ports, how do we kind of address these challenges. So on the challenges, the first one is of course capital, right? So there are a lot of opportunities out there, but the challenge is to get financing, in the sense that because as a company, a lot of our investments are long term and large financing. So for example, if you have to invest in a port, we have to invest in key walls, in key cranes. These are not cheap equipment or investments. So we need large amounts, and we need investments for the longer term. So to find that right balance, that's a challenge. So you can just get into something and then lock yourself up. There's a lot of challenges in getting the right finance. So that's one of the challenges. There's also risk, right? So if you look at many of the markets that we are operating in, right, many of these markets have risks. So it's not easy to go there and operate in a market. You may be experts in port handling, you may be experts in maritime field, but are you experts in that particular political scenario, what's happening there? Or how do you go around the regulatory scenario that's going there? So there's a lot of challenges and risks involved in the investment scenario. Compliance is another area. A lot of the markets that we invest in actually are heavily regulated. So, the way we operate in UAE or the way we operate in, some other countries may not be the way that we operate in some of these markets. There's a lot of laws that we have to go around, foreign exchange laws, dividend remittances, all these these are risks. So we need to make sure that we address those at the right time. Strategy. I should have put this as the first one. Because strategy is something that's really very important when you make investments and go for expansion, because a lot of companies, not to name any of them, but they just go in blind. Anything and everything that is out there, you just buy it all, and then you are stuck with all of them, right? So that's not the way to go. It's very important to have a very clear strategy and make sure that we invest in companies that fit your strategy. That means that sometimes you'll have to say no to some of these companies. Maybe people outside will say, hey man, these guys, they did not invest in such a great opportunity. It doesn't fit with our strategy. So it's very important to look at that. That's one of the key challenges that we're facing. And of course, the geopolitics, not going to comment on all that. There is always, it's not at all easy investing in places, companies, when there is geopolitical tensions, right? So that's one of the things that we need to be looking at. These are the 5 challenges. Of course, there are also opportunities that we see in the market, right? So there are 3 big opportunities as a ports company, right? So one is, of course, it's expansion of port infrastructure. So there are a lot of opportunities out there where we can invest in port infrastructure. Concessions to be one. So we see a lot of opportunities. So that's one of the big opportunities that we see. And as we said, right, AD Ports is going towards and is actually a vertical integrated trade enabler. So what we look at is try to invest in each of our clusters. We go to a customer and we tell them that, okay, we as AD Ports want to give you the solution. We will handle your freight. We will handle your logistics. We will handle your port handling. We will handle your digital solutions, right? We'll give you a digital platform. We want to integrate and go to a customer as a one-stop solution, right? So that's one of the opportunities that we have. Not many companies have that. There are many that do have, but it's not so many of them that have the same USP. There's a lot of scope for public-private partnerships also. But when you go to invest in a company or a country, there is a chance that you have to go in with the right partner. But the most important thing the opportunity faces is to get the right partner. If you don't have the right partner, then you have a big risk. So to choose the right partner and the partner for the long term is extremely important. And of course, as we talked about, and as you've seen, AD Ports has done, we have our eye out for a lot of investment and M&A. So that's one of the opportunities out there. But again, as we said, have the right strategy in place to go and invest in an opportunity. This is my last slide, by the way. So I just want to conclude with 4 challenges that we spoke about, and how as AD Ports we are addressing these challenges. So it's just more. I hope some of you at least can go away with some of these learnings from what we put up here. So how do you invest during volatility, right? So if you just take your personal finance situation, right? Petros talked about in the morning, right? That a lot of people in volatile situations, they tend to hoard cash, don't want to invest. So that's the safe way to do it. But if we invest in a volatile situation and we find the right opportunity, it can give us long-term returns. So it's about finding the right balance between investment and keeping the right reserves of cash. Always on the lookout for right opportunities. So the most important thing that we keep in mind is to have a proper due diligence done, see if it fits within our strategy, and then make that investment. And the other thing to keep in mind is always do a post-analysis of our investments. That's something which we've seen many companies don't do, right? You go invest, there is a business case, you see all the rosy picture, go and invest, and then later on after 5 years, we see the company is not doing well. So it's very important to look at that investment return, how we are doing it, how we can learn from that going forward, right? So that's one of the key parts. Geopolitical tensions, again, this is another thing, right? A challenge, whether to go into markets where there are geopolitical tensions, do we not do business in some areas? But then again, governmental support, government-to-government support is one of the key factors that will help us to kind of maneuver this particular situation. I again talked about acquisitions fitting with our strategy. So this is one of the mistakes many of us make, many companies make. And it's very key that to have a proper strategy in place. What are the companies you are looking to invest in? What are the markets that you're looking to invest in? And then take an informed decision on which markets, which companies that you would invest in. The cultural fit is also important. Maybe it's a very profitable company, it has got long-term growth prospects, but does it fit your culture? And then, of course, the post-investment returns to make sure that there's a proper due diligence done on how the company has been performing post the acquisition. Did it meet all that criteria that you actually set when you acquired them? And then what are the learnings from that? And then finally, of course, the availability of funding to support the growth, right? So it's important to have a balance of long-term funding and short-term funding available with you. So in this volatile market, if you don't have access to quick funding, very difficult to seize opportunities. So as AD Ports, we have a kind of an RCF facility which helps us to go and invest into quick wins, and then later on convert that into long-term bonds or bank syndicated finances, things like that. So that's my take on the maritime landscape as AD Ports, what we have done. And what I'd like to say as concluding remarks is there are a lot of challenges that we are facing, but there are a lot of opportunities also. The important thing is to be resilient, how we can actually grow and find the right opportunities within this landscape. If you look back, personally, I never imagined a situation of the pandemic, right? That many of us will be stuck in our homes for a year, and there will be all these supply chain challenges. It never occurred to us. And then it all happened, but at the end of the day, we have weathered that storm. So I urge, and my message is basically that let us foresee the challenges in the future and make sure that we are resilient for the future. Thank you.